I'm here with Rosemary Smithson, President of U.S. Women Connect, and Marilyn Fowler, President and CEO of the Women's Intercultural Network. And last night we had a really great celebration of the Women's Cultural Network and women organizing on the ground. And these two women are trailblazers, and we're here having breakfast at the Red Vic Peace Cafe, and they got to talking about how they met and went from arranging flowers to being radicals on the streets, and I had to get this on tape. So, Marilyn, why don't you start off and talk about how you and Rosemary met?
I went to the University of Missouri in, I don't remember what year that was.
As a junior, don't have to years.
And this was a long time ago, and I pledged a sorority because that was the thing to do then. And I pledged Pi Beta Phi, which was really #1 on campus. And Rosemary Smithson was the president there at the time, and that's where we met. So that was in the 1950s, right?
Right.
And from there, I went back. I moved to Kansas City then, and I got married, and I got my first job at Hallmark Greeting Cards. And there was Rosemary. She was in my department. She was a writer, and we worked there for a while, and then I had to leave. They force you to leave there when you're 5 months pregnant. I was really 7 months, but they didn't know that. And then a few years later, I moved to Summit Street in Kansas City, and Rosemary was a block away. And we reconnected there.
So I just have to ask you quickly, Hallmark, you have to tell them you're pregnant, and then once you hit 5 months, they say, okay, your time's up?
I mean, you have to have a doctor's statement, yeah.
Was this common back then?
Oh, yes. Well, remember, at that time, you couldn't be pregnant or married. Well, never mind pregnant, but you couldn't be married and be a school teacher. We're talking about the days when you couldn't be married as a school teacher. That's why there were so many homemade school teachers, quote, at the time, because the women didn't want to give up their jobs.
Wow. This was in the 50s.
Yeah. It's not actually not that long ago.
Not at all.
Think about it. No. Okay.
Okay, and then moving forward, I joined Planned Parenthood. My mother-in-law got me involved in Planned Parenthood because I had my third child, Chris. And
so she said,
Rosemary. I don't remember if we went together or if we ended up there at the same time, or how did we connect back at Planned Parenthood? Do you remember?
Well, I think we should get back to our days before Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
Because Planned Parenthood was such a transformation for us. We were young married women. We didn't have a lot of money. It was you had a lot of parties though, and Marilyn and I would work on these parties. We got almost kind of famous in our little way for it because we'd start on Monday. We'd plan decorations. We'd plan food. We weren't even very good food.
Theme. We had themes.
We always had a theme for our party, and we had games, and you would work on these games. We would even make up games, so that it really pretty much took our whole week to get the party together. And and we had one little group, and I'd have one week, and Marilyn would have one a couple weeks later. And that was really sort of what we thought we were supposed to do. Then we somehow, we can't remember why or who recruited us, but we started working at Planned Parenthood. And at that time, you sold pills at the affiliate in Kansas City, Missouri, on Troost, and you had, it was a storefront, and so the women would come in to buy their pills. Well, we took Thursday morning, and we would share. One of us would go or the other would go. And I had the little baby, about 3 or 4 months old, and I'd take her in her little chair. It was a little flat thing they used to have, and I would put her in the window. So we had a little baby in the window in Planned Parenthood. So take it, Marilyn.
Well, but I would take Chris, but Chris was sitting up, so maybe you had Lee by then.
Well, no, definitely I had Carol. No,
Okay,
Carol
anyway,
Lee.
no, but when we got to Planned Parenthood, it was because my mother-in-law took me to a Planned Parenthood reception with Kermit Krantz, who was the first doctor who actually performed legal abortions in Kansas.
Yes.
So that would have been 1964, something like that. Chris was sitting up then. And yeah, we were on the Planned Parenthood board, and we integrated the board. Planned Parenthood nationally was not integrated. And we were having a lot of problems with the African American communities. Jesse Jackson came in, remember?
Yes.
So we integrated the board in Planned Parenthood, and it went all the way to New York for integration. That was kind of one of our things. So it was when civil rights was also a big issue. And so we were at that, it was a transforming time for Planned Parenthood, for us, for a lot of...
Well, one wonderful thing was there were some, wild women, and they marched on Planned Parenthood, and we were all stunned. We were saying, no, we're here to help you. And they said, no, the doctors aren't giving you enough information. So we were one of the first groups that the women marched on, because I guess they felt safe marching on Planned Parenthood, but we were all horrified. And that's when we began to really realize what was happening. But it was true in that time. This was just before the sexual revolution, of course. And so you had, we were basically helping poor women. It was sort of like the ladies with the baskets over their arm helping poor women. And so the doctors, of course, I think that our expression was they were playing them cheap, and they didn't even realize it, but the women were not getting correct information. And so we finally had to we realized on the board that the women weren't getting correct information, and they were confused because they didn't dare ask the doctor a question. So we would have a woman stationed, and you would go and you would get your exam by the doctor and his prescription or whatever, and then you talk to the woman and she'd say, honey, what did the nice doctor tell you? And then help clarify. So those were very funny days. And then when the sexual revolution happened and the children of board members were showing up in the waiting room, things changed radically and overnight. And so, Marilyn, where were we? We're now at the radical. So we were all getting a little radical, but of course, I personally wouldn't even use the word feminist. We were all becoming feminists because we were realizing, wait, these nice doctors really just don't even understand us. We're like, it's sort of a cattle call. And so we were becoming feminists, we just didn't understand it. I didn't use the word for years that I was one.
Did you, Marilyn?
I don't remember terminology, but I know that because I was at Planned Parenthood and I was seeing this discrepancy of when we would go out to other clinics in the black community, and it was very separate. It's very segregated. We had a very large black community, we called it then, in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And they were middle class.
Yeah.
Blacks too. And we would go over to those clinics, and some of the women from Planned Parenthood would show up because our volunteers were with the Junior League.
Yes.
And I can remember they were coming in one day with their really nice fur coats over to this clinic. I thought, there's something wrong with this picture. And so I kind of went into the civil rights piece there and connected with Alvin Brooks, remember, who was head of human rights. And this was right after, it must have been around 68, because it was when they tried to burn down Kansas City. All they burned was the inner city, remember?
Yes.
It was when they had the riots after Martin Luther King. And I got caught up in that kind of emotionally. So I kind of went that path with it. And that's when we really began to see that Planned Parenthood really needed to take a look at its diversity all the way up to the top.